Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim,
And I'm Tia.
and we're so glad that you are here with us today for another episode. And as always, like we do in other episodes, we begin with a quote. So this quote is by Jim Rohn. You must take personal responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself.
Yep.
And this one speaks so much to me because it does really tie into our other episode on the victim,
Mm-hmm.
right? That we
Totally.
did
They're hand in hand.
They're hand in hand when we did the episode on the victim mask. Because when you are blaming others and think that it's because of the circumstances or the person or the event that's causing you to feel a certain way or behave a certain way, then you feel like a victim. Like the minute I start to complain or say why, here's another episode that it's tying into is resisting the as is. Right? Whatever is happening, whatever circumstance, season, the wind, whatever is happening, it just is.
Exactly. And I'll add into your complaining. It's the whenever you say, or I say, they did, they are, that's not taking any responsibility because it's focusing on the other.
Exactly. So it's about taking responsibility for how we respond, right? How we respond.
Or react if we're triggered.
Or react if you are triggered and own that. And like I've said once before too, that I always try to remind myself it's 20% what happens in life and 80% how you respond. And the other thing too, I think about is nature, right? When we try to draw a comparison, when a huge hurricane or a big thunderstorm or tropical force wind comes along, what do the trees do? Some might break, those that, will break, but others, the trees just flow. They move back and forth. They go with the wind. They go with they flow. Right. And like you've used the example before of flowing with the water.
And adding on to that nature piece too, there's something coming, in the Midwest, tornado more so.
Yes.
Animals don't just stay and be like, I don't want the tornado to come. They don't blame, they take cover. They go where they need to go. They take responsibility for what's happening on the outside.
So taking action is a big piece of this.
Exactly.
It's a really big piece.
Same with hurricanes, right? When the big one happened in Thailand, remember all the animals, not all, but a large amount of animals just disappeared and went, hi.
Because they know. So how are you with this? Are you good at this in your life, taking responsibility?
I've gotten so much better. I mean, I still fall into my little victim mode and say, oh, she's being, or he's being, or they're being, I do that external, more in interpersonal relationships, but it's very rare. Or even when I do that, I quickly can return to be like, no, don't go there. That's not true. What can I do? How can I create and respond or take action in a way that is authentic and with integrity for me, and taking that ownership. And I work with people to do that, like in my Authentic You class that I do, I have guidelines for that circle. And one of them is you take 100% responsibility for your experience in this circle. Because it's true. Because how many times have you been with people who go to a lecture or a class or anything, and they're like, oh, the teacher didn't give me this. I expected that. And it's like, no, you show up. You speak up if something is not being met. You take responsibility of doing the work outside of class. Because if you're not going to do the work, you can't blame the guide or the teacher that you didn't get what you wanted. So that's one of my guidelines, and I do it in the coaching too. It's like, you make your experience.
And how do your clients respond? Do they typically take responsibility, or do they want to sit and just complain and wallow in this
And
person, like what the other
yeah.
did to them?
And there's a place for that, right? Because that's processing. As long as it's in a safe place and you're not externally taking that out, so in the safe space of the circle or in the safe space of a coaching session, we can deconstruct that. And then through the process, it's like you're complaining, you're doing this, now let's come around and put the spotlight back on ourselves. Because sometimes we just need to complain, but it's when we stay in that complaining mode,
Right.
Hey, I'm complaining to understand and to deconstruct and understand. And now I can come back and recognize, what we've talked about before, my co-creation, my, what is the as is. Now, how do I choose to show up or react or respond or feel? Notice that our feeling is our response.
I can think of so many people in my life that, so many people that I've known that will stay stuck in blaming and pointing the finger, and nothing ever changes. That's the thing. You don't ever see any change. And that was the case for me too, until I started to really do the work and take responsibility.
Right. Because until you do that, you're going to stay stuck. I mean, and we live in a culture that is what we expect everyone else to do everything. Oh, they're not, the government's not doing this, or that store did that, or, whatever situation that's showing up for them, it's accepted. And almost encouraged to not take personal responsibility, because then change happens, right?
Yes. And I think too, even when I'm trying to take personal responsibility, it still is sometimes hard. You can still be stuck a little bit in terms of changing the behavior. So being mindful of it is a process and it does take time.
Exactly.
And so, just as an example of an area in which I do try to take responsibility, but it's hard, is when I am worrying about my kids. Worry, I feel like it's such a generational pattern to worry. My mom was such a worrier. She worried about us all. She worried about everybody all the time. But think about that. It's stressful. And can you change what another person does? Right? No, you can't. And so for me and moms do that anyway, right? We're protective. We want to protect the baby bears. So for me, it's really hard to change that, but I'm aware, and my kids will call me out and say, Mom, you're worrying too much, and have to let it go. Like, stop worrying about this.
Oh,
and
yes.
it's true. Right. But at least I own it, instead of saying instead of deflecting, because that's what happens sometimes when we don't own or take responsibility. You deflect. It's so hard. It goes into that denial mask that we talk about too. Right. It's so hard to own and accept, which is why so many people do deflect.
Right. I was laughing because what you were just sharing about, how your kids are like pointing it out to you. I literally just had that experience in the last week.
Did you? Do you want to share, or is it too personal?
No, I could share it because it's all me.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm not sharing anything personal about that. Hopefully that they don't feel that. So I apologize to them if they feel I'm sharing something I shouldn't. But I really don't think, because it's really more picking on myself. And they were spot on, because they'll be 20 in just a few months, and obviously are home because of quarantine, and they lived in the dorms. And now that things have been opening up, and so they've been seeing their boyfriends, and they have a friend that they've been seeing. It used to be driveway, but as the states opened up a little more, now they will go and get coffee together and whatnot. So anyway, so out and about a little bit more.
Yeah.
And, I'd say, so when are you going to be home? I don't know. I'm like, well, can you give me a time that you're going to be home? And they'd give me a time. And oftentimes I would negotiate the time. And it was so funny. They're just like, Mom, you need to stop. We don't need a curfew. We didn't have one. We don't need to tell you when we're going to be home. Like, well, so we negotiated. And I'm like, you're right. I was in control and worry and all of these things. And it came to the point where it's like, you know what, you tell me when you're going to be home. I'm not going to tell you, you have to be home early or any of that. But I was starting to fall back into like the high school years of, okay, I want you home by a certain time so I can sleep and know that you're home safe and tucked in your bed, because it is different when they're in your home. And there is truth. They are adults. They can make their own decision. They can drive home. And yes, there's the risk of hitting a deer and all of those things. But does it change from 10:30 at night to 1? Not really. The driving risk remains the same for the most part. But it was my own worry and my own wanting that comfort of having them home in bed. So it was very much the control. And I could have easily been like, but you're still living under this roof. You're back home. I could have gone into the the external and not taking responsibility. But it was a conversation of like, oh yeah, I need to take responsibility that I was crossing a line at this age. Yeah. They were being responsible. It's not like they were being irresponsible. And even if they were, that's really their decision.
It is. Isn't that the hardest though?
It is.
That's the hardest, is to really just let go and let them make those mistakes and make those decisions. Like you said, it's their decision. That's so hard.
It is hard. And that reminder of they are mindful. They are making choices that are reasonable, and it's a delicate balance, but it's noticing how quickly we can fall into those old patterns of what it was like when they were 16, when they're not 16 anymore, and knowing that's my co-creation and my wanting to control. So taking my 100% responsibility that was creating a conflict, which was me.
Right. Which is amazing and awesome, because you did the work, right? You took the time to stop and you heard what they said. You reflected on what they said. You went inward and you thought about it and said, is this about me? And you realized it was. Whereas I don't know about for you, I think you're saying that. And I know for me in the past that I would immediately have become reactive. I would not have looked at my part at all in it. I just would have been like, you said, this is my house, my roof, my rules. You're going to abide by them, or adios,
or give me the car keys and you're done.
Yes.
But that's not reasonable. And what is that teaching and guiding and modeling? We're not modeling what we want adults to take that responsibility. It's no different. Because we can see when someone's not taking responsibility, and it's frustrating.
It is. It is frustrating.
We have to remind ourselves that when we're noticing someone else not taking responsibility, is there a chance maybe we're not taking responsibility either? And checking in.
That hurts though, doesn't it? Sometimes.
Oh yeah. Especially when you realize you really screwed up.
I know.
It is. It's interesting. I mean, that conversation with my kids was, something that happened the night before too. And that was a miscommunication part. So we worked through that as well. So, there's lessons all the time. It's just whether we take them. And I'm so grateful that, like you have, they're not afraid to call you out.
Yeah, they do. And I love that. Yeah. You know what's been a big one, and I haven't really landed for sure where I feel on it, but one that's been kind of a big aha for me of taking responsibility. So in some ways, my son is a lot like me personality wise. And I had a pattern with my parents where I didn't share everything with them. I didn't, as an adult, maybe always, I don't know, but I didn't share a lot. I mean, I did, but I didn't probably share as often. I wasn't really, like, I didn't talk to my mom every single day. I want to say I wasn't enmeshed, but I don't, it's tricky to tell if what was healthy and what wasn't healthy. Right. But like my sister would talk to my mom every day and maybe share a lot. I didn't talk to my mom every day, and I didn't share a whole lot of like personal stuff with her. Like I didn't share what was going on in my marriage or what was everything that was going on with the kids. Things like that. And now I'm noticing that with Ryan, you know, he's very much like that. And he's not doing it on purpose. He's just, what it is that he's just private, I think, and he just holds things in. And I was just private. And I wasn't purposely withholding anything from my parents. It's just who I was, and I just didn't share. But I knew my mom wanted more. She wanted me to share more because she wanted more of a connection with me.
Yeah.
Right. And I just always resisted that. And now that the shoe is on the other foot and I'm wanting a little bit more of that kind of connection with Ryan, and just, you know, for him to share a little bit more of what's in his heart, what's in his mind.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, I'm like, oh, you know, now I'm like, could I possibly have shared a little more with my mom? And I'm owning that a little bit more. I've been really, because now that she passed away in January, you know, and it's been a few months. And so I'm reflecting more on that now. And I'm wondering, I'm been thinking about it a lot, taking responsibility and ownership for, you know, possibly I was a little closed off and could have been a little more open with her. Does that make sense?
It does. And so now it's repeating, and you're on
and
the
now
other
it's repeating. Side. Yeah. So, that was an interesting one for me to own, because I did resist it, I think, for my whole life for the most part, or just didn't, you know, I knew she wanted more.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what the resistance was for me not giving more. Was it just me and who I was? Is it just Ryan, who he is? Or is there a block, you know?
Like
so
a
there's
safety, like a fear of safety or something.
Yeah, there could be something there like that. Or just, I see it in him that he just is private. You know what I mean? He just keeps his thoughts to himself. And that's how I was, at least when it came to my parents. I would share with other people, with friends maybe. And that's what he seems to do. He seems to have his people that he shares with, which is good, but it's not necessarily always myself or my husband. So it is what it is. Can't change it. Just have to accept it.
Right. So it's the as is, and then taking 100% responsibility for your piece is your whether that's what, if it's repeating you know, his reasons may be different than yours.
Yeah.
You don't know. Right. But it's taking that responsibility of, I'm okay with this. I can create the opportunity for him to share. And when he chooses to, you're there. But taking that responsibility internally and being okay with it, instead of saying, he's not sharing with me. Why is he not doing this? Why is he not doing, you know, instead of so focused on him, it's turning that spotlight back on you.
Yes.
Am I doing what I can to create the space?
Yes. And I think that's what made it the double-edged sword with my mom, is that I felt then sometimes the pressure to open up and connect with her. Right. So I'm aware that, like,
Ooh.
yes, so I'm aware
Yeah.
that I don't want to repeat that pattern
Mm-hmm.
of projecting my own inner need onto my son and now make it
Fabulous.
about me. Like, why?
Yes.
So I just, like you said, I can plant the seeds, or I can open the door, say, hey, how are you? You
Mm-hmm.
want to catch up, whatever. And if he says no, then just like leave it at that
Right.
and not take it personally, because we did an episode
Right.
on that, not take his no or his boundary personally.
Exactly.
It's not about me.
Mm-mm. And recognizing that if you go in there with that needy energy, if you're
Yeah.
staying in that needy energy, you have to take responsibility that that's pushing and creating a wall.
Yes.
And since you're aware of that,
Mm.
you know that you're you've cleaned up that energy and removed that pressure.
This is so important, because this is the part I think is so difficult for people to see, because there's like a smoke screen. It's almost as if like
Mm-hmm.
you can't even tell that you're doing these things. Like, I'm sure my mother had no idea
Oh,
that any of that was at play.
right.
And so it's particularly interesting that you brought up, the neediness, because there are so many people, including myself at times, that come from that needy place, that unmet need.
Right.
And that's the only lens that you can see through.
Right.
It's like it's screaming, like, my needs are not met, my needs are not
Mm-hmm.
met. And you're only acting and behaving from that vantage point.
Right.
And that makes it very difficult to then take 100% responsibility, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't see your part in it. You don't see
Nope.
how you're co-creating the situation.
Exactly. Exactly. Because everything is co-created.
Yeah. So
Everything,
let's
you
talk
have a
about that.
responsibility.
Let's talk about that co-creation.
That's a long topic.
I know.
So it comes back to that 100% responsibility, right? So no matter what happens, you have influence on it.
Mm.
And whether you realize it or not, you have co-created the situation. Now, having said that, obviously situations of abuse and, you don't create the tornado wiping down your house, but
Right.
you create what happens next.
Mm.
You create how you process it. You create how you
Mm.
interact with the next situation and the next and the next. So the initial event, potentially, I mean, there's times you could have a play in it. If you really, really dive in, and we can say that for another conversation,
Okay.
with those challengings where it's like, no, I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't ask for that. Well, maybe you kind of did in a way that you're not conscious of. But let's just
Mm.
take a tornado, for example, because
Okay.
that's nature,
A random.
a random event,
Yeah.
right? So you didn't ask for the tornado to come in and take out your home or whatever, but you have a choice in how you respond to knowing there's a tornado warning.
Mm.
If you're out walking, you should get yourself home to a safe spot, right?
Yeah.
Just like the animals retreat and find the safest spot that they can. It's the same for you. You don't get to decide that the tornado goes in this path, but you get to decide it happened. Now, do I cry and say, why me? How could this happen to me? Or
Yeah.
do I say that my house is gone? Now, can I find a way to move forward without being a victim? I mean, it doesn't mean you can't have moments of like being upset. No one's saying
Right.
that you don't have your feelings. So you process your
Right. You need
feelings.
to process. We don't want to bypass.
No. And so you process those feelings and then you come through them without a story. Because it's when we create that story,
Right.
then we're not taking 100% responsibility. Because if you're taking 100% responsibility, there is no story. It just is what it is, and you take your ownership and moving forward. Like, yeah, this sucks. And
Yeah.
now what? Oh, I need to call the insurance company. Oh, I need to make sure everyone's safe. Oh, I need to do this.
And those darn stories, right? They get in the way, but why do we do that? Why do our brains want to create stories? Brene Brown talks about it a lot because
Yeah.
it gives us a sense of what? Control, right? And the unknown.
And understanding, trying to make sense of it.
Trying to make sense of it.
But our stories are based on our old patterns and our limiting beliefs and what we have experienced to date. So they're not necessarily true.
They're not true. Yes.
Which is really hard to see sometimes.
It is. It's really hard.
Justify it to make it true. But then we're going through that lens, like you said.
Yeah. Through a different lens. Yeah, I'm thinking about an example because, I mean, right now, coronavirus is really rampant in Florida. And my dad is turning 80 in August. And my plan was to go down toward the end of August to see him for his 80th birthday. And I haven't fully decided if I'm going to because I will have to self-quarantine when I come back. But here's the thing, right? If I were to go, if I went and I got coronavirus, like I can't then sit there and complain about the fact that I got coronavirus.
Great example.
Right?
Such a great example.
Right. That's what I'm thinking because I made a choice, or if I do it, I haven't decided. But if I make the choice to get on the airplane, fly down to a state that is becoming the epicenter of coronavirus.
Right. And so we're at the end of June recording this, just
at the end
for our
of
listeners.
June. Yes. For those
when things are ramping up.
Yes. Yes. That's a good point for anyone who may watch this in the future, end of June 2020. If I were to end up getting sick after flying back from that state, I can't complain.
No,
I mean,
I
can,
choice. Right.
But I can complain. That's a choice too. But that's just going to keep me stuck as a victim, and it's going to create more suffering for me.
And physical suffering, because if you're stuck in that victimhood and and have a virus that can go any which way and upside down, right? Because it doesn't have a pattern. Your immune system's going to be depressed.
Yeah.
And so how would that help you moving forward versus taking the responsibility of like, I made a calculated risk to get on that plane.
Yep.
I knew there was a chance and I got it. Now what?
Yes. Because if I put myself in that victim role, and what happens there, if you're in victim place and you said your immune system is a little more compromised, right? Then you can end up, what you're trying to say is, then you can end up with the, what are they called? The hormones, and end up being more sick, right? Because your resistance is lower. So you may be more sick than if you were in a better headspace. Is that what you're trying to say about that?
Yeah. And again, we're not saying that would happen, but it could. And so there's another co-creation piece. I mean, that's kind of a hard one to see and own, but it is kind of true. I mean, how we nurture our body and our immune system can have an influence. Again, I mean, this virus has its own little plans, right? It's taking super healthy people too.
Yes.
And we can choose to make choices to up level and decrease our risk, up level our safety and decrease our risk. And
don't get on the plane. Don't go to a state where it's rampant, and wear the masks. So many people are not wanting to wear the masks.
And those are masks that we do recommend you wear.
And those are the ones. Good point. Oh, that's good.
It's a different kind of mask.
That one you can keep on. The other one, the responsibility mask.
There we go. It's a good responsibility mask.
Yes, exactly.
It's 100% responsibility. And I think that's a really neat point that you just said. So thinking of that, the physical mask that we are encouraged to wear outside of our homes. So that is the responsibility mask, and it's 100% responsibility for yourself and the co-creation, because you're influencing others as well. So when you choose not to wear your mask, right, they've shown that it's really to protect others more so than yourself. And so the co-creation piece is knowing we are also influencing others.
Such a good example.
And the situations. And that's that piece also of understanding, kind of like the tornado. You can't help it. You went to the grocery store and no one was wearing a mask and you were wearing yours. And now what?
Yep. And now what?
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And particularly to think about it in terms of relationships, like that's old cliche or saying of it takes two.
Right.
It takes two to tango. It always does.
Oh
Even
my
if
gosh.
one partner is, let's say your partner is a bully or your partner is narcissistic, domineering, controlling, whatever, abusive. Okay, so you didn't ask for all that to happen to you. You don't ask for those behaviors.
Right.
And you have a part in that. You have choices, right? And you've talked about this before in another episode. What are your choices? Well, you can leave that relationship. You can stay in the relationship and keep taking it and doing the same thing over and over. That's victimhood. That's insanity because you're doing it over and over and wanting a different result. Or you can stay and you can change yourself, or you can try to change the relationship. You cannot the situation. You cannot change the person. You cannot control or change another, but you can control or change yourself.
Right.
Or you can leave altogether. So that's the co-creation.
Exactly. Accept it, change it, leave it. Those are your three choices.
Those are your choices. And
taking that responsibility.
And taking that responsibility. That is your responsibility.
So you can choose to stay. That's a choice. As long as, but it's understanding that you are making a choice to accept and keep the status quo.
Yeah. Exactly. And you can complain about it. I know you can complain and know that when you are complaining and stuck, you're co-creating that as well.
Right. And you need to take 100%
I
responsibility for that.
I think it would be okay to just maybe share that one other quote, and then we could, the one where it says, look at the word responsibility. So
I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay, this one is by Stephen Covey, and he says, look at the word responsibility. Responsibility, the ability to choose your response. Highly proactive people recognize that responsibility. They do not blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for their behavior. Their behavior is a product of their own conscious choice based on values rather than a product of their conditions based on feeling.
Ding.
Ding. Good way to end that.
We could do a whole nother episode just on that quote.
I know. Yeah. I just will end by saying that what I love about taking 100% responsibility is that it does give me a sense of freedom and empowerment.
Totally.
Right? Isn't that the byproduct of it? Because then I feel like when I take responsibility and I know for my part in it, and the only thing I can control is me.
Right.
That makes me feel more empowered than the fact that when I'm blaming someone, then where's my power? If the other person is the one that is going to dictate what happens to me.
Right.
But when I own my part and I do what I can do and I take my action and I choose my response and I become proactive, that's empowerment.
And that's really taking off all those masks, the victim mask, the shame mask, all of those, because then we realize we have that choice, regardless, like in the quote, regardless of our conditioning, our patterns, all of that, we have a choice.
Exactly.
To respond. Responsibility. I love that. I love the breakdown of the word.
Yeah. So let's just maybe reiterate, because I know you've been really good at saying this to our listeners and viewers, that we recognize that it's a process, taking baby steps. This isn't like you flip a switch and all of a sudden you do this.
Right.
It's taken me so long, so many years to work on this and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So we are just encouraging you to look, be aware, and maybe take a baby step.
Right. Maybe go ahead.
I was going to say, and of course, share comments if you want more advice or more help from either one of us. We can both help you. Comment, and of course, always like and share.
Right. And email us if you have a question. I mean,
email.
Piggybacking off of what you just said, Kim, think of a situation in your life right now that's causing you angst.
Oh yeah.
Think about it and start to look at your co-creation where you can take responsibility. Start there. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Start with a little thing. Just be like, oh, when I'm complaining about that other person, how have I been either accepting this, and now how can I change it or leave it, or with yourself, right? So how can you start to take that responsibility and respond? Find your ability to respond. Responsibility.
Yeah, that's good way of pointing that out.
Just be curious.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you at the next episode.
Take care. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.